find yourself watching television these days?
No, I don't. And I'll tell you why, because I've realized, I think I have become extremely wise because, no, seriously, because Plato said that Socrates said that wisdom was really knowing how little you know. And I sincerely believe now that I know almost nothing. And I think that I'm sitting in a room with people who do think they know things. Well, you know, and I'm very skeptical about it all. I think we don't know anything important. And if you follow the history of science, it's terribly funny that scientists keep announcing either that they've discovered something or they're very, very close to discovering something, except it never happens. There was a professor, a philosopher, a guy called Karl Popper, who was the best, I think, the best philosopher of science of the last century. And he called it promissory materialism, which is, it's going to be there any moment, but just, you know, and then I remember the AI stuff coming 15 years ago. Oh, we're just from the edge of cracking. What is that noise?
It must be construction.
Oh, really? Oh, I thought it was a microphone. And he said, you see, I don't. He said that scientific progress is all about falsification. That if you can't falsify something, then you can't prove it either. Do you see what I mean?
Right.
If you have a theory, that theory has got to be tested and is falsifiable. And I think people don't understand that, and they constantly think that scientists are cracking it, and they're never cracking it. They're just improving things bit by bit. But often they go down an absolutely, completely wrong road. I mean, there was a physicist called Lord Kelvin who, I think it was about 1898, yes, I think it was 1898, announced that all the problems in physics had now been solved that were important. And that all they were doing now was arguing about the fourth decimal point, right? That was 7 years before Einstein discovered relativity. And that world, the predictable materialist world, fell apart. But they were absolutely convinced that they were there. And I think that's the question now. I was talking to a very clever man called Rupert Sheldrake recently, and he said they're now trying to replicate a lot of experiments that have been done that are not replicating. That 60% of the experiments in social science that have been part of the knowledge of social science, they're not able to replicate them. And a smaller percentage, like 45, is true of medical research. So everything's beginning to change. There are all sorts of odd theories out there. Maybe the physical laws of the universe evolve. And I think we don't know, you see. But what I notice about scientists is they don't want to know about the philosophy of science. You know, they want to just do science. You must say, but you don't want to examine your own assumptions. There's an extraordinary arrogance there. I once had dinner with Stephen Jay Gould, right? You know him? Famous, famous biologist. And I was chatting to him. You're a bit arrogant, but I liked him. And I said to him, what are you doing? And he told me about 4 books that he was about to write, and he knew exactly what was in the book. And I said, now, if God called you into his office, Stephen, and he sat you down and said, you can ask me one question about something that's been puzzling you all your life, and you would love to understand it, what would it be? And Gould said, I can't think of one. This is a scientist. You're obviously unimpressed. To me, that is absolutely appalling. And so I'm kind of deliberately needling you guys, because I think you've got to understand that we don't know as much as we think we know. I'm waiting for a moment when somebody in a white coat one day stands up and says, we scientists now know that we know less than we thought.
Results show.
Yes, well, Rupert Sheldrake and I are working on something there to tease scientists to be a little less sure about what they're doing. For example, the professor of psychology emeritus at Cornell has done an experiment, and it has been replicated, and it's very similar to one done by a guy called Dean Radin at the Institute of Noetic Sciences across the bridge in San Francisco. And what Dean did, which is a very simple version of the experiment, is he sat people down in front of a television screen, and he showed them three categories of pictures. He showed them pictures that were of everyday objects like a telephone or a glass of water or a boot. Then he showed them nice, very slightly pornographic thing, but nothing hard or shocking, just rather sort of sexy, nice, warm, makes you feel, you know, sort of pictures. And then he had a series of pictures of things like accidents and operations that make people go, and he would send these pictures into the room where the subject was sitting looking at them on the screen. And what he discovered, because the subjects were wired up with that sort of lie detection, so if you know how they, what is it? When you sweat, the resistance of the, well, what's it called? Yes, that's right. Yeah. And what he discovered was that about 2 seconds before they saw the nasty pictures, they started to sweat. There was no way that they could have known what picture was coming up. They didn't sweat if they were going to get a nice picture. Well, they were generated randomly. Now, you can't explain that. And this is a professor who carries it out, and other people have replicated it. So there's an awful lot going on. Oh, somebody's leaving. Bye, have a nice lunch. There's an awful lot going on that I think we know about and we don't. And you guys are particularly prone to it because you do highly, highly intellectual work, you know. Don't forget the right brain. Don't forget that instinctive thing, because if you read what Nobel Prize winning scientists say about the moment of inspiration, you'll discover that it's not logical. It's nothing to do with logic. It's to do with some idea that sometimes comes in from left field, and they become very famous. And some of them actually feel they don't deserve it because they don't really feel it was their idea. It just seemed to come to them from somewhere else.